Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 12:54 p.m. East Coast time, Thursday, September 19th, and this is my final thoughts video for the NFL slate week 3. Look, this video last week got a ton of attention, almost 11,000 views. We're approaching 10,000 subscribers on this channel, so please, if you watch this, probably a lot of people will, if you get any sort of value from it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It's all the information that I probably spend around 40 to 50 hours, yes, 40 to 50 hours a week trying to gather. All that information is packed into this sort of a video. So everything is data-based. Every single thing that I'm doing right here is from just loads and loads of information that I'm processing and putting into this video. So again, if you get any value from it, please hit that subscribe button. Get us towards my huge goal of 10,000 subscribers by potentially the end of the week. If you're new here, my name is Sal Vetri. I do cover daily fantasy sports in the NFL, NBA, WNBA, and MLB streets. We're going to get into this. I do have exclusive content linked down below, as well as some free content as well. You can follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. And this video is going to be sponsored by FantasyDraft. Look, check it out. If you haven't been on FantasyDraft yet, the last 2 weeks, it's overlaid huge, meaning that there's been more money put into the contest than people playing in it, right? The company had to put money into the contest, which means that you're facing less people for the same amount of money, which means your equity goes up. It's rake-free DFS right now in FantasyDraft. Rake is pretty much the main management and maintenance fees that a site charges, right? So you have Draftkings is going to be charging 30%. Same with FanDuel. Right now, there's 0% or very little percent when you factor in a monthly fee from FantasyDraft. So it's extremely low. You're pretty much burning 30% of your money when playing on Draftkings. I play on it, right? There's bigger prize pools there, but I've been getting a ton of my money over to FantasyDraft because this might not last for a while over there. I don't know if it's just promotion based, but it's a very good spot to be playing right now. Your first dollar should be going into FantasyDraft. Their contest structure is amazing, and again, not much rake. So check it out. It is linked up down below. You can check out FantasyDraft, and you can get into that. Guaranteed, more than likely, the first 2 weeks it has to overlay. So, with that said, let's get into this video. This is a target offense sheet behind me. Target offense sheet is just Vegas, pace, all this stuff, defense versus position stats. You can get that on Patreon. That is something that I provide over there. My Patreon has so much stuff. You can look down below. Our ownership show will be tomorrow, leverage show. My tiers are already in. My game-by-game notes, about 10 pages of game-by-game notes, really detailed. That's in there. Lots of stuff overall, so you can check that out if you're interested. But starting with the quarterback position, my interests. I'm trying to filter it down a lot because the quarterback position this week is just, there's value everywhere, and ownership is going to depend on where I get a little bit, but just so many nice spots to go to. Patrick Mahomes against Baltimore, very good team implied total. Last I looked at 31. It's just fantastic spot. The pace in this game should be pretty good as well. Baltimore's going to run a lot of plays. It's going to be a quick-fire offense for Kansas City. And Patrick Mahomes right now is coming in at low ownership, so I just love the spot overall. How do you not like this spot for Patrick Mahomes? And look, people are going to say, oh, but Baltimore's secondary. Well, those people aren't paying attention. Marlon Humphreys is playing limited. Jimmy Smith might not be playing this week, one of their better outside safeties or cornerbacks. And then Tavon Young is out for the year more than likely. He's not playing this week. He has a serious neck injury, which reminds me of Nick Collins. Shout out to Packer fans out there that remember him, pick 6 in the Super Bowl. He had a bad neck injury as a defensive back. He had to end his career. So Tavon Young, apparently a serious neck injury. He's their star slot cornerback. We'll get to that when we get to wide receivers. But Patrick Mahomes, if he's not going to be owned, I get it. The price point's a lot, but it's been a lot every other week, especially a ton last year, and he was able to big tournament. So lots of interest in Mahomes. The other side of this game should be an exciting game. The highest overall total on the slate at 55. It's a nice spot for Lamar Jackson as well. I have more interest in Patrick Mahomes. The price point's a little bit better on Jackson, of course, but I think Mahomes gets there more times than not. Dak Prescott's unreal. This guy's unreal. He finished last week 23 of 23. He's second on the overall in the entire league at the quarterback position in points per attempt, only behind Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson is heavily skewed by rushing upside, so that just tells you how good Dak Prescott has been in the air. He's running more, 40.5 yards per game in the first 2 games. So Kellen Moore's offense is clicking on all cylinders. Dak Prescott a huge favorite. And if your argument against me saying that Dak Prescott is one of the top 5, 6 quarterbacks, probably even top 4 on the slate this week, is that, oh, Sal, they're 21.5-point favorites. They're going to pull them in the fourth quarter. If the Cowboys are up 38-3 in the fourth quarter, you can be damn sure Dak Prescott had a good game, right? You can be damn sure about that. So if they pull him in the fourth quarter when they're up 45-7, I'm fine with that because he probably's got 25-plus fantasy points. So I'm not concerned about that at all. This is not basketball where players get pulled like midway through the third quarter and then can't get to their ceiling games. The NFL, the only way you're pulling players, and last week Tom Brady played the entire game. They didn't pull him. Lamar Jackson played deep into the fourth quarter, week 1 against Miami. He had a ceiling game, right? Tom Brady gets 25 points last week. Dak Prescott is not going to have 15 points in this game, and they're going to win by 40. It's just not going to happen. It doesn't correlate. So Dak Prescott, fantastic play. Josh Allen against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's second worst defense overall. Josh Allen's loving himself right now. Had the worst defense overall come into Buffalo last week. They beat them and the Giants. Worst just rated PFF, worst in pass rush, worst in pass protection. Now, the second worst in pass rush, the second worst in pass protection. Bottom 5 in tackling rate, bottom 5 in rush defense. The second worst overall. Cincinnati Bengals come to town. Josh Allen, I love what they're doing here. They're using him as a running back in spots and around the red zone. Like, they're using him on options as a quarterback. Stuff out of like Army-Navy games in college. He ran behind Frank Gore on a direct snap to the quarterback, and he just ran it behind him for a touchdown. It wasn't even like he scrambled. It's awesome. So rushing upside for sure there, which is huge for quarterbacks. Obviously, you can play him without a stack. I do prefer one of his wide receivers. We'll get to Kyler Murray. This is the fastest pace game I have ranked ever in my database. Right now, Carolina is playing at the fastest pace in the league. Even if Cam doesn't suit up, which he's still in a walking boot, so I don't think he will as of Thursday, they're still going to play at a fast pace. Like, an injured Cam Newton these first 2 weeks, the way that he was playing injured is probably just as good as what Kyle Allen's going to be able to do out there. So Kyler Murray, they're playing at the second fastest pace. They're running the most hurry-up offense by over 30% more than the next closest team. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury out there is just absolutely bowling out in terms of how fast they're playing. 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. Their 3 wide receivers are the top 4 in routes run this year. They're just running so many plays. So obviously Kyler Murray had 350 yards last week, 349 to be exact against the Ravens. Yeah, it's a really good spot for him overall against the Carolina team that has been giving it up. Even against week 1 against Jared Goff. Didn't look great and accurate, but they still gave up a ton of first downs, especially to the slot. And then in week 2, they gave up a lot to Chris Godwin in the slot. So really nice spot for Kyler Murray and some of his receivers this week. Jameis Winston, I've loved him all week. He grades out by far the best quarterback in all of my models. 5,400 is too cheap of a price point. Facing what we just said earlier, touched on it, the worst overall defense in the league. Dead last in pass rush pressure, right? Dead last in pass protection. Has loads of weapons out there. O.J. Howard, they're saying they're going to get the ball more now too, after being invisible last week on Thursday and not doing much week 1. Chris Godwin's looked amazing. Mike Evans is getting healthier now, and I imagine he's not going to have the type of season that he's off to so far at the end of the year, so it's due for regression sometime. Why not against the worst defense in the league? He's 5,400. Right now, for me, he grades out as a top 5, a top 3, hint, hint. If you want to see my overall projections, those are on Patreon. A top 3 scoring quarterback on this slate. Scoring, not even point per dollar. By far the best point per dollar play. Jameis Winston's in an absolute smash spot. Get to game stacks here. You can get to him on a one-off in cash. He's in a fantastic spot. You know what you guys are doing that want to say, Jameis stinks. Yeah, he's looked terrible week 1. He's looked terrible last year. But you're using anchoring bias. You looked at his week 1 performance. That was also skewed by a deflected interception that O.J. Howard dropped, and that got credited to Jameis Winston. A fumble that the center missnapped, and that got credited to Jameis Winston. And then, yeah, bad game week 1. But week 2, he looked fine. He averaged over 8 yards per attempt on a game where he only threw 25 times. But everybody wants to hold on to week 1. Well, while everybody else holds on to week 1, you're missing out on by far the best point per dollar play and one of the best plays overall projection-wise at the quarterback position in a fantastic matchup with a very nice total. Last I checked, above 27 for the team. That's it. Deshaun Watson actually is another spot. This is a contrarian play. Deshaun Watson is a fantastic fantasy quarterback. Last week, just overall, the offensive line looked terrible. And that's the problem. Laramie Tunsil went out last week, and he got hit even more. Well, Tunsil's supposed to be back in this week for the Texans, right? They traded for him from Miami. He avoided any serious injury. And it's just a good spot overall. The Chargers, yes, Desmond King in the slot is fantastic. On the outside, Casey Hayward is good, but DeAndre Hopkins should be fine in that matchup. But then no Derwin James, no Phillips, the backup to Derwin James. They're at a third-string safety, and they're at a backup cornerback number 2, which they're playing musical chairs with right now, which is going to be fantastic for Will Fuller, who leads the slate, and we'll get to it, on air yards per target. So, yeah, it's just absolutely a fantastic contrarian spot for a low-owned Deshaun Watson and Houston stacks. That's all my interest. If you're somebody coming in here that's going, Matthew Stafford's in a great spot, the only piece that I would like to get to Matthew Stafford with is Kenny Golladay. So I'm not going to be getting to much Stafford. Tom Brady, sure, he's in a great spot as well, but there's only so many quarterbacks that I can get to. Those are my favorite ones. Let's get to running back. If you're not yet, subscribe to this channel. Hit the subscribe button. Why not, right? We're about to hit 10,000. That's absolutely awesome. Let me know down below who's the one running back that you're trying to prioritize this week. Any price range. Who is it? I'm prioritizing a lot of the expensive guys, as you can see. Saquon, he's coming in at low ownership. Half the ownership of Zeke. A third of the ownership is McCaffrey. Like, those guys are higher owned. If you're going to tell me Saquon's going to be lower owned with a quarterback who actually can keep drives alive now, and a guy in Saquon Barkley who's second in the entire league in rushing yards on 12 less carries than Dalvin Cook. Yes, he's second by 38 yards on 12 less carries. This guy's insane. He's nuts. His floor in Draftkings is like 18 fantasy points with a ceiling that we have yet to see this year in the 40s. I love Saquon Barkley this week, especially at low ownership. Ezekiel Elliott, huge home favorite, right? 20 plus points against Miami. Miami's given up the most rushing yards, 100. Let me listen up, ready? 195 yards per game on the ground. Obviously a smash spot for Zeke. The ownership is following it. Really good overall spot. He had 76% of the snaps last week, 25 touches. And again, if your argument is, but Sal, they're going to pull Zeke in the fourth quarter. If they're up 45-7, don't you think Zeke did something? Don't you think he touched the ball 20 times and had 100 plus yards and maybe a couple of touchdowns or at least one? The argument of them pulling players does not hold much weight in the NFL. Look at the past few weeks. Week 1 against Miami, I already talked about Lamar Jackson. Mark Andrews went for 100 yards and a touchdown. Hollywood Brown obviously went for 2 touchdowns in a huge game. Like, these players are still hitting their ceilings. Last week with the Patriots, it was pretty much all skewed out, right? Everybody got theirs for the most part. Like, you had Antonio Brown having a huge week. It got skewed because the defense had 2 touchdowns. But for the most part here, Ezekiel Elliott and really anybody on this Dallas team, and even on the Patriots team in these wide spreads, if they're getting pulled out of the game, especially the caliber that Ezekiel Elliott is and the usage that he will get, and also Dak, his quarterback, obviously every snap will get, I'm not worried about them being pulled out with 6 minutes left on the final drive of the game in garbage time. I can care less when they already have 25 fantasy points each. Christian McCaffrey, I'm not worried if Cam goes out. I'm not. This game is going to set pace records in terms of how fast they play. So if the drives stall a little bit because Kyle Allen is not effective, and they have 2 stalled drives or 2 more 3-and-outs than usual, well, they're going to have like 3 more drives than usual in this game. So it almost balances out. So I don't really care. This is by far the fastest paced game on the slate for me and all of my numbers and all of my projections right now. I love the spot overall. It's a good spot for McCaffrey. In distinguishing these guys, Zeke is by far in the best spot in the top range, right? 8,700 above these top 3 stud running backs. But if Barkley's ownership holds, he's going to be the one I get the most of. Dalvin Cook, 7,800. This is like an $8,500 running back who's way too cheap. He's looked fantastic, a huge home favorite. He leads the league in rushing. He's just looked like an absolute monster. 3 rushing touchdowns already. He's getting involved in the receiving game, 70% of the snaps already. The only downside is he's facing a 8-man in the box on 29.3% of his carries, which is not good. Not good by any means. So that's a concern that they're loading up the box already when it's pretty obvious that they want to use Kirk Cousins as a game manager. But either way, Cook in a fantastic spot. Austin Eckler, amazing spot against Houston. He's going to have like 20 touches in this game. He's breaking away from Justin Jackson instead of it being like a 60-40 week as I was thinking week 1. By now, last week, it's already a 75-25 split. His floor in the receiving game with no Hunter Henry out there. Obviously, no Melvin Gordon. It's like 4 receptions, which at 7,200 for Eckler is way too cheap. Love that spot overall for him. I love that overall game as sort of a sneaky contrarian stack. Marlon Mack, my last interest, 5,800, the cheapest I go. Really good spot for Marlon Mack. Leads the league in rushing attempts at 45. He's running twice as many snaps or routes as Nyheim Hines, the pass-catching running back in that backfield. He's not. Marlon Mack is actually the 3-down back. He looks very good. Again, they're just trying to run the ball. The good thing here is Marlon Mack's only facing an 8-man front on 6% of his carries. We just said how Dalvin Cook is facing it on 29%. Nobody is loading the box against Indianapolis, which is weird because like Jacoby Brissett's the quarterback. But yeah, Marlon Mack getting a ton of touches, 22.5 so far per game through the first 2, and nobody's loading the box. The concern is that, and he's a home favorite, which checks both of those boxes, being home and being a favorite for a running back. He's getting some pass catching work. Check that box, right? Getting touches overall. He's cheap. So I like him a lot in this price range. The only concern is that he spends a lot of time, the most on the slate, behind the line of scrimmage, 3.24 seconds. Now, this can be skewed. Like Le'Veon Bell spends a lot of time behind the line of scrimmage. So does Saquon because they're using their vision, their patience. So I don't think that's that negative of a stat, but it's something to point out for a guy who has never really been declared as a patient runner. Maybe he's just getting bogged up in the backfield a little bit. But Marlon Mack, really good for the price point. My other slight interest, Aaron Jones, 6,100, a home favorite. I'm not worried about Matt LaFleur saying they're going to split the reps. They're already splitting the reps. Like, Jamal Williams played 47% of the snaps last week. Does nobody know that? And Aaron Jones still went for a career high 23 carries, 27 overall touches. Lined up in the slot, he played 58% of the snaps. Jamal Williams played 47. So obviously they were on the field at the same time for a couple of those snaps. Aaron Jones was lined up in the slot, which is fantastic. Now, Denver's a top 10 rush defense through 2 weeks. But the Packers are at home as favorites. They're interesting. I much prefer Marlon Mack. David Johnson's getting a lot of ownership for his price point. I'd rather find the extra 400 to get to Austin Eckler. James White, always a GPP option, never a high priority, but I did put him in here. Frank Gore, you have to at least mention him. Doesn't seem like Devin Singletary's going to play. Didn't practice on Thursday with his hamstring injury. TJ Yeldon will probably fill in for the Singletary role, get like 30% of the work maybe. But Frank Gore was fed last week, over 20 touches. Right now, Cincinnati ranks 29th out of 32 teams in rush defense. So, yeah, Frank Gore, nothing spectacular. Probably doesn't get a lot of passing work. But if you do think, as they are big favorites, Buffalo at home, that they'll be in the red zone and around the goal line, well, Frank Gore has a lot of upside there if he's going to touch the ball like 18 times in this game. Now, the price point is the main reason I'm talking about him. Otherwise, I'd rather get to other plays. That's it. We can talk about some other guys real quickly. Alvin Kamara, no interest with no Drew Brees. I just think there's better options. Le'Veon Bell, a 10 implied team total. I think he gets a ton of usage, but Bill Belichick loves to cancel out the best option. And if he's going to get a ton of usage and still have like 8 catches, but overall like 60 yards, you're going to find a lot better plays both below and above his price point of $7,000. No interest in the San Francisco backfield. I'm just not going to get there. There's just too many guys back there. Mostert and Breida split the reps week 1. Breida had a nice week, but he only played 28% of the snaps. So that's not great overall there. So just quickly looking to see if there's anything else. No, nothing else. That's mainly it. There's a couple of defensive injuries that we can probably touch on, mainly for Saquon Barkley against Tampa. They're going to be without their main linebacker out there, I believe Smith. So if he's going to be missing in Tampa Bay, I might be getting that name wrong. Devin Smith, I think it is. If he's going to be missing in Tampa Bay, that's their best front 7 player, in my opinion. That helps Saquon. It'll also help Evan Ingram once we get there. So always keep in mind that you should be checking defensive injuries just as much as offensive, because it's going to skew how much you want of a player. Like Saquon being low owned, I love him a lot already at his ownership. And now the fact that he has Daniel Jones in there, which is going to be a better quarterback than Eli Manning and the dust can that he is. And people for the argument of, but Eli didn't have receivers. Did you watch any of those 2 games, or are you just coming up with a narrative in your head? Because Eli was missing wide open receivers. He was holding on to the ball when receivers were wide open. He was just bad. Like, he's just bad. Terrible. Overthrowing Saquon on 3-yard passes. Like, go watch the games before you come up to me in the comment section saying, but Eli has no receivers. No, these guys are wide open. Benny Fowler was down the seam wide open last week by about 4 steps. Eli just overthrew him. Like, no, Eli Manning is bad. That's why he's not playing anymore. So, yeah, but he did good while he was there. So, for 2 years. So, yeah, Saquon Barkley, very good play. That's it for right now. You can see some of my notes down here if you're interested. Wide receivers. This is going to be the biggest one, right? Don't have my notes here, mainly just because I'm going to say them out loud. But Julio, too cheap against Indy. I mean, not much to say about Julio. He's a fantastic wide receiver. He's like $1,000 too cheap. If you want to get to him, you can. He's going to have a lot of ownership. Keenan Allen, 25 targets so far, first 2 weeks. That is the second highest in the league. This guy looks absolutely dynamite. This team is just going to funnel the ball, right? As long as their offensive line is not great. And it looks better than expected right now, the Chargers, but for the most part, still not great. They're funneling the ball to Austin Eckler. They're funneling the ball to Keenan Allen, right? Last week, Eckler, a ton of touches and overall targets. Keenan Allen, 15 targets after having 10 week 1. The guy's like in line for double-digit targets every week. This is why I think this game is very sneaky for a game stack. You have Keenan Allen, you have Austin Eckler on one side, you have Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, and Will Fuller in a fantastic spot for Will Fuller this week on the other side around that. So, also, I don't think I have this in here right now, but I'm going to add it live on camera. Will Fuller has to be a yes. The reason he did not populate as a yes for me already is because his name pops up as Will Fuller, the V, right? The 5th or whatever it is on Draftkings and all of my data sheets. So for some reason, when I scanned his name to be a yes, I only put Will Fuller and it didn't pull it. So there it is. There you go. Will Fuller's a yes. But Chris Godwin, fantastic play. This is the one I want to talk about. Sammy Watkins. Nobody's owning Sammy Watkins. You all are out of your minds. Sammy Watkins, 23 targets so far this year, 12th in air yards. That's fantastic in terms of how far his targets are going. That means there's upside there. No ownership on a guy who right now is getting the ball from Patrick Mahomes and a team total of 35, a game total that's the highest on the slate of 55. And he ran in the slot 79% of the time last week. If your wide receivers are in the slot, they obviously have a mismatch problem, right? They're facing a worse cornerback. They're more skilled. They could use the entire field. Not only that, the star cornerback or the stud young quarterback in Tavon Young, the slot corner for the Baltimore Ravens, which makes them part of their scary defense, he's not playing. We talked about it earlier, his neck injury. Sammy Watkins is going to be in the slot for 80% of these routes against a backup. A backup cornerback who got torched last week by Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald. Yeah, Sammy Watkins at 6,800 is too cheap. You all are out of your minds by not playing him this week. It's just insane. Give me Sammy Watkins all day. If I had to redo the one that this one dude video with the new ownership numbers I'm seeing, it wouldn't be Emmanuel Sanders. It would be Sammy Watkins by a mile because I thought his ownership was going to be like 18%. It's coming in below 10%. You all are nuts. Mike Evans, yeah, if you're going to team stacks here, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are fine. They have the matchup against the worst defense in the league. And if people want to also come at me and say Janoris Jenkins is a good cornerback, go check his PFF grades. His PFF grades are in the 50. Good weeks are like in the 80s. Good to okay weeks are in the 70s. Okay to bad weeks are in the 60s for PFF. 50s is terrible. Janoris Jenkins is not a good cornerback anymore. So really good spot for Mike Evans against him and Chris Godwin in the slot. Christian Kirk, we talked about it. Love this spot against Carolina. Cooper Kupp had 7 catches week 1 from an inaccurate Jared Goff. Then last week, Chris Godwin went for 8, 121, and 1 primarily out of the slot. Christian Kirk is going to be in the slot in a fast-paced game where he just looked fantastic. Tackled on the 1-yard line last week. He's too cheap. John Brown I love this spot for John Brown. If you're playing Josh Allen, you have to have John Brown. You could even play John Brown in cash. Everybody thinks John Brown is just running straight down the field. He's not. 3 of his catches were within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage last week. 6 of his 7 catches were within 14 yards. So yes, he has the deep play upside we saw at week 1, but he's also catching short and intermediate routes, which for me means he's more consistent, which for me, when you pair that with his deep play upside, means he's a very viable number 1 wide receiver. If he's on your waiver wire for some reason in the season long, go get John Brown. This guy looked fantastic last week running the short and intermediate routes. He was overthrown by Josh Allen on a deep pass, which would have been back-to-back weeks of a deep touchdown. Now he's facing a bottom 3 defense in the league. Bottom 3 overall defense in the league, bottom 2 actually, and dead last in terms of their pressure rate last week. And if you take both weeks so far, they're second to last in pressure rate and they're second to last in pass coverage. John Brown looks like a fantastic play. He was actually running out of the slot as well, which is beneficial. I did a whole video on Emmanuel Sanders. You can check that one out. I like his overall upside. He'll probably move into the slot a little bit, at least a third of his snaps against dusty old Tramon Williams. I'm a Packers fan. Tramon Williams is too old. He got cooked by Chad Beebe for a 61-yard catch and run last week. Terrible. Antonio Brown didn't play week 1. Only played 33% of the snaps week 2. Saw 8 targets. Already has 5 red zone targets on the year. Second most out of any wide receiver. And didn't play week 1. Only played a third of the snaps week 2. He's way too cheap against a terrible Jets secondary. If Jermaine Johnson even plays, he's dusty. Too cheap, $7,100. Antonio Brown. And if anything, Antonio Brown was used 57% of the time in the slot. Yes, that hurt Julian Edelman. So if you own Julian Edelman, I'd be kind of scared. He saw his game low in targets at 4 in 3-year span since 2016. That's not great that Antonio Brown was lining up in the slot for Julian Edelman. For Antonio Brown, that's huge. Really good spot. Marquise Brown looks fantastic. He's a legit number 1 receiver. And if you think I'm being bold by saying that, go look at the routes he was running last week. So crisp. Caught 8 balls for around 81 yards. But his route tree, it wasn't just straight up the field like people thought it was from week 1 when he didn't have a lot of snaps. Played 65% of the snaps week 2. And his route tree was short, intermediate slot routes, go routes, posts, everything. He wasn't just running deep down the field. So like John Brown, there's consistency there. And this guy is very, very good. I love the game stack of the low-owned, for some reason, Chiefs and running it back with Marquise Brown. The guy's an absolute burner, Hollywood Brown. Nelson Aguilar is the chalk this week, 3,600. Probably not going to have Deshaun Jackson or Alshon Jeffrey out there. I get it. He's the chalk. He probably won't be shadowed by Darius Slay. Slay shadows good wide receivers like Keenan Allen last week into the slot, but he won't be shadowing Nelson Aguilar. Aguilar should be seeing a lot of targets, probably like a target floor of 7 out of the slot is very good. The price point's too good. Like in tournaments, I might lean elsewhere and just do different lineup construction than forcing in a 30 or 25% on Nelson Aguilar, especially coming off of a big week where expectations are going to be high and it's hard to reproduce what he did last week. But yeah, it's a good spot overall. The price point's too cheap. Kenny Golladay, fantastic spot right now. You had Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley torch the Eagles on the outside. Ronald Darby looks terrible. In week 1, you had Terry McLaurin, the rookie, who looks good for the Redskins, torch the Eagles on the outside. Now you have Kenny Golladay, who's coming off of a 33% target share week. From Matthew Stafford's 30 attempts, 10 went to Golladay. Matthew Stafford's not going to throw the ball a lot. He threw 30 times last week. Week 1, he threw 45 because it went to overtime, and he faced the Cardinals, who are a top 2 pace team in the league. He's going to throw more times than not, around 30 times. But seeing Golladay get 33% of those is fantastic. Do not be jamming Danny Amendola into your lineups, everybody. It's crazy the people that keep getting in my mentions. Like last week, yes, he was facing Desmond King. I predicted that was not a good spot. The man didn't get anything. Goose-egged. Danny Amendola survives on seeing 10-plus targets a game. He's not going to see 10-plus targets when Matthew Stafford's throwing 30 times this game, and 8 to 10 of those are going to be going to Kenny Golladay, and 5 of those are going to be going to TJ Hawkinson, and 5 of those are going to be going to Marvin Jones, and 5 of those are going to be going to the backfield. You know what you get left for Danny Amendola? 4 to 5 targets. Danny Amendola's average ADOT is below 8 yards. So even if he catches all 4 balls, you're looking at about 40 yards. You're very touchdown dependent there. Not a lot of upside for GPPs. It's crazy that so many people want to play Danny Amendola and the Cole Beasleys of the world. Like, since when do these guys have upside in a tournament? Even in cash, when do they have upside? Like, I have right now Danny Amendola projected for 5 targets, and I have him projected for 3 catches. That's not getting me anywhere when he doesn't run down the field. So, no, don't go there. Stick to Kenny Golladay in that game. Talked about Will Fuller. Leads the slate in air yards per target. Some of those key stats, all those are listed on my spreadsheets over on Patreon. Fantastic spot for him against the cornerback in the Chargers they're playing musical chairs with. Their number 2 outside corner, Desmond King in the slot, is fantastic. Yes, the best in the league. Casey Hayward on the outside against Hopkins is fantastic. Although Hopkins can easily win that matchup, he probably will. And then Will Fuller on the other side, guy who's getting a ton of air yards and looks deep. Tunsil being back gives more time overall for Watson with a bad offensive line, but Tunsil's definitely going to help it. Yeah, Fuller looks like a really good play. He's just too cheap at $4,900. He's like, I think, my favorite value wide receiver right there with Emmanuel Sanders at those price points. Way too cheap. And then my secondary interest, you can just look at them. I mean, ones that stand out. Fitzgerald is going to be in that pace game. Hardman in that offense, if you're stacking, looks okay. Adams is always in play. Amari Cooper is a maybe for me. It's a really good spot, right? He's going to get more volume, which will help with the inefficiency since he'll be getting shadowed by Xavier Howard. So you can get there if you want. I just like other plays in that upper 7K to mid 7K range. Tyler Boyd used a ton in the slot last week. It went up 20%, 45% to 65.8% routes run out of the slot. He's going to face a zone defense, which means a lot more passes to Tyler Boyd. Now, a lot of them are going to be short passes, but based on his red zone usage, he's a fine play. At very low ownership. Tyler Lockett should get the slot probably against PJ Williams. Good spot for him after coming off a double-digit target week. Preston Williams, rookie wide receiver, looked good. Saw 25% more snaps last week in his game. Caught 4 balls for 60-plus yards. And if you're running back this game for some reason, you want to get pieces of Miami, I don't recommend it. But getting to him, Preston Williams makes sense, at least to me. Devontae Parker also out there, second in the league in air yards, but I think he's just dust, in my opinion. And Xavier Woods, the best defensive back for the Cowboys, safety, he's going to be out. So if you are running back this game, I would definitely clearly do it with a wide receiver from Miami if you're game stacking, but I would not recommend it. James Washington looks pretty good. We talked about Will Fuller being pretty good for his price, right? We talked about Will Fuller being the number 1 player on the slate in air yards per target. Well, James Washington's number 2. His snaps went up to 60% last week. He's now going to be playing with his college quarterback. Dante Moncrief's snaps went down consequently to 31%, and his dislocated finger is making him look very, very bad. I would not be shocked if James Washington sees a lot of playing time. I do like him at $3,500. Devin Smith, the wide receiver for the Cowboys, is going to be filling in for Michael Gallup and his team leading 15 targets this season. I like the spot overall. Randall Cobb, some people are going to want to have interest in. Randall Cobb plays in the slot. Michael Gallup does not run routes out of the slot. So the role change here, you should be focusing on role changes. The role change is going to be coming for Devin Smith. $3,400, former second-round pick of the Jets. Looked really good, caught 14 balls in the preseason, and now he looks to kind of build off of that in a very favorable spot. He's also fine. Matt Collins, $3,200. You have J-Jaw, I think $3,500 from Philly. These like secondary receivers who are going to be on the field. J-Jaw filling in for Alshon Jeffrey. Matt Collins filling in more than likely for Deshaun Jackson. You can get to them if you wish. I think I like James Washington out of all these 3,500 and below wide receivers. There's just so much wide receiver value down here. You have to start to ask yourself, am I overreacting to the injuries of these guys? Like Devin Smith, all these guys are going to see role changes, of course, right? Devin Smith is going to see a lot of snaps. James Washington, I imagine, is going to get closer to the 70 to 80% snap rate this week, and he has a lot of air yards, which means that his targets are actually worth boom or bust upside and have it there. Same with Devin Smith. So those are my 2 favorite guys over Matt Collins and even over J-Jaw. Nelson Aguilar we already have as a yes, so that's why I'm just kind of differentiating. Demir Bird, he's that other wide receiver with Christian Kirk and Larry Fitz in Arizona that's top 4 in routes run. He's $3,000, but he's at 10% ownership right now, projected ownership. I don't want that. I'm not getting to that. Like, I get it. He's $3,000, but his targets are so low ADOT, right? It's similar to like the Cole Beasley's. Even on the outside, he has low ADOT targets. So, yeah, not much interest there. I'd rather stick to the guys in the slot. Only interesting because he is seeing 14 targets through 2 weeks in a fast-paced offense, and he's going to be very touchdown-dependent, though, and I do think you're going to see a lot more, definitely more looks for Christian Kirk and Fitzgerald, and there's so much value that you don't have to kind of dig for that bottom-tier value there. That's it. If there's other wide receivers that you have interest in, sure. DK Metcalf looks fantastic, but not this week. He's going to have Marcus Lattimore on him, and all he does is run straight down the field. He doesn't run any slant routes or anything. He's very one-dimensional. It's more so bust for me than boom. Tight end. Tight end is so good this week. Like, if this is the week to play 2 tight ends, if there's any week, it's this week. Travis Kelce's too cheap. He's too cheap. I don't care that he's 7,100. If you take the title of him as a tight end, if you take him out of being a tight end, he's at the same price range because he is a wide receiver. He caught a touchdown out wide last week. He runs out wide a lot. He's in the same price range as Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Juju. Who else, right? Let's go down here. Same price range as all those guys. AJ Green's not playing. Adam Thielen, right? T.Y. Hilton, Michael Thomas. I like Travis Kelce in this offense more than all those guys, right? For the most part, not the Keenan Allens up top, but those guys that I have nose on. So if you take away his designation as a tight end, he's a very good wide receiver in this league who's underpriced. So he's too cheap. Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert did not practice Wednesday. That's the most updated news I have on this. If there is indeed no Alshon or Djax, Zach Ertz is going to be the number one option. 16 targets last week, 100% of the snaps. He's only $5,700. This is like the best cash tight end, I think, but there's so many good tight ends on this slate that he's way too cheap. He's going to have at least 12 targets this week, and it's a fantastic spot for him. It's really hard to ignore how much usage he's going to get this week. Evan Ingram, a big bump up because I believe it's Devin Smith or White. I don't know why I can't remember the guy's name now on camera. The linebacker, very good one for the Bucs. Him being out's going to help Evan Ingram. Ingram's price doesn't change from last week. Eli Manning's just disgusting, terrible game, overthrowing people, holding onto the ball. And now he's still 5,200. New quarterback out there. And the guy looks fantastic. Evan Ingram looks really good on the year, even in a week where he had a floor game, 10.8 fantasy points. I really like the spot overall for Evan Ingram. I do like the spot more for Ertz, but if you're running game stacks, as you should be in tournaments, team and game stacks, then yeah, running it back from the Tampa Bay stack with Winston and whatever receivers you get to, running it back with Evan Ingram makes sense. Mark Andrews right now is the number one tight end in all fantasy football. It's crazy. He's the number one tight end through 2 weeks. Obviously, it's not sustainable on only 50% of the snaps, but when he's on the field, he's running routes. He's number one. Zach Ertz passed him on Sunday night in air yards, so he's now number 2 in air yards, number 1 in overall targets. He's like number 3 in receptions, number 1 in yardage. The guy's got 2 touchdowns already. He looks fantastic. Like, he's being the main beneficiary. Like, Lamar Jackson is looking his way all the time. Now, he's only on the field for 50% of the snaps, like in his career, even this year, but every time he's out there, he's running a route. So he looks really good to me. Vance McDonald is okay to play. 90+% of the snaps. Was very touchdown dependent last week, but it was very good to see Mason Rudolph look his way. Had 7 catches on 7 targets. Darren Waller's too cheap. I don't get it. 100% of the snaps week 1, 95% of the snaps last week. He leads the team in targets with 15. He led the team in receiving yards last week. Tyrell Williams is dealing with a hip pointer injury, so if he's out, they're just going to funnel the ball to the middle of the field, and Darren Waller, a guy who was filling in for Jared Cook's role last year on this offense under John Gruden, loving to play with the tight ends. Darren Waller, middle of the field, more athletic player than Jared Cook in my opinion. Looks really good, has yet to see the end zone. He is right now top 5 in overall targets as a tight end with 15, and he's top 5 in yardage with over 130 yards. So Darren Waller looks really good right now. George Kittle, it's just tough to get to this price point. I talked about it on the Awesemo stream today, Thursday, with Lofty. 5,600 is a really good price, but Zach Ertz is going to have so much more usage, so many more targets for $100 more. Evan Ingram likely will see more targets and usage for $400 more. So it's just a product of elimination and getting to so many players. I probably don't get too much Kittle. He'll be low owned, very good for GPPs because of that ownership, but like the other tight ends are in just such better spots. OJ Howard at 3,900 or 3,800 is way too cheap. Greg Olsen, even with no Cam Newton, Greg Olsen is right now number 2 in routes run for tight ends. He's playing 90% of the snaps. This man looks fantastic out there. Even with no Cam Newton, I still like it. Austin Hooper, guy's too cheap. Austin Hooper right now is going to benefit from Indianapolis potentially having no Darius Leonard, a very good linebacker. That also helps Marlon Mack, by the way. Very much helps him. That doesn't help Marlon Mack. That also helps Devonta Freeman. But by the way, as not having Darius Leonard out there, but right now Devonta Freeman, I can't play him. I don't care that he's 4,900. Devonta Freeman is the worst running back in the league this year on yards above replacement. What does that mean? If you put any other running back in that neutral spot as Devonta Freeman, they would have picked up 44 more yards on average than Devonta Freeman. That's how bad he's been. So looks terrible. Only getting like 65% of the snaps. Don't want any of him. But Austin Hooper will benefit from no Darius Leonard if he is indeed out. Hooper, a guy who's just going to be seeing like 6 targets each week, if not more. We saw his ceiling kind of week 1. With 9 targets. He's too cheap at 3,600. I do like his upside there. But again, my main priorities are, in this order probably, Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, Evan Ingram, and Mark Andrews. So that's where I'm at with that. That's where I'm at with everything. This is a long video, right? It's our final thoughts. Look, if you made it all the way through, let me know down below. What do you think of this video? Let me know who's your one player that you're trying to prioritize heavy this week. And please, hit the subscribe button. If we could hit 10,000 subscribers by the time Sunday's games kick off, I would be so happy. So thank you so much. I'm doing this full time now. It's a ton of fun. You can follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. If you like this content, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Check out my other videos for this week. There's a lot of other content out there. I'll be live on Awesemo's channel Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, the number 1 ranked DFS player in the world. His company's YouTube channel, I'll be there filling in as a guest. And then also I have exclusive content linked down below in the description. You can check all that out. Lots in the description. Free strategy guide giveaways as well. So appreciate it. My name's Sal. You already know that. Check out Fantasy Draft as well. Rake free DFS over there. You're just losing money. You're literally burning money by not putting it in there where there's no rake as to where there's 30% rake on DraftKings. Your $100 going into DraftKings this weekend, you're losing 30% of it to site maintenance fees over the long haul. You're losing 0 on Fantasy Draft. So check that out for sure. Again, my name's Sal. You already know that. Peace out, gang.
Hey, hold up.
1 second. Check out this page. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button, all right? And if you're interested in Patreon, if you're not already a patron, you can hit that button on Patreon, become a patron, it will take you right there. You can also check me out on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. And hey, if you're interested, this next video that's about to pop up, why don't you check it out as well. See ya!